Welcome to Defence Connect Spotlight, connecting you with the leading defence industry experts from Australia and abroad.
Well, good day everyone, it's Liam Garman here, editor of Defence Connect, back with another episode of the Defence Connect Spotlight podcast. And I'm joined here today with an expert who's going to talk to me about one of the hot topics in defence, in national security and defence industry, which is counter-drone systems. I am joined by the one and only Andy Wilson, CEO of Advent Atum. Mate, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, this is your second episode, your second time on the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of demand for what we're going to be talking about today, which is counter-drone systems, and in particular, we're going to dive into the technological aspects of your HORAS TDE. We'll come back to that in just a second. You and I were having a coffee before the podcast. Just then you mentioned that you're off to, well, I'm not going to say where, it's your announcement. You're off overseas for 12 weeks with a very exciting venture for Advent Atum.
Yes, so we recently won the Air Defence Challenge with Thales Global or Thales Group. So we'll be heading to France on the 11th of March to kick that off.
Fantastic. So what does the challenge look like? What
so
did it put you through?
It's a 12-week sprint to minimum viable capability with our current system to apply to their air defence systems with a potential business line contract at the end of it to be confirmed.
Fantastic. That's no shortage of that's a pretty big demand. How many people in your team are you bringing over?
We have to figure that out because we also have a Ukraine project at the moment, and that we want to conclude that in April. So, a small team, an SME, that's now a multinational company, as you have just recently released on, I think a media release just popped up, a couple of hours ago. We've established ourselves in Ukraine as well as an LLC, so now an Australian and a Ukrainian company.
Fantastic. Yeah, you guys seem to be expanding pretty quickly now, potentially footprint in 3 countries. What are you doing at the moment in Ukraine? What's your work in Ukraine look like?
So we're upgrading their air defense systems, so we're automating those so they be able to get more air defenses online, and because they have a personnel shortage, they'll be able to use those personnel for other air defense systems. And as we recently saw on the 24th of February, there was on the 3rd year anniversary of the Great Invasion by Russia. Kyiv city alone was attacked by 270 drones.
Now, I think it's there's been a lot of demand to discuss counter-drone systems. A lot of people in the national security apparatus acknowledge that, as you've already highlighted, that the future battlefield will look increasingly automated, maybe even AI, but we're not going to get onto that philosophical discussion, distinction between the two. But can you give us some insight? Because I believe you've been to Ukraine in this business capacity. For our listeners, can you give some insight into what it's like on the ground over there and what the future battlefield actually looks like?
Yes, so counter-drone you need to broadly bring into air defense and active protection. So in they call it the survivability onion. So obviously you got avoid penetration or avoid kill at the very start, and that's where your armor is. But also you have avoid acquisition, so that's like reducing your signature, and as well as your before that is avoid hit. So I'm using that because there's multiple layers of the onion. So avoid hit we also play, which is active protection. Can't say too much because it's under NDA, but you should see something on the market very shortly, and a couple of videos as well. So you push into outside of the avoid hit is your avoid detection and avoid a counter. And that's where you go into the bigger air defense systems, anything from EOS Slinger, which is more your VSHORAD, to your APKWS. Then you're pushing out to Starstreak, Gepards, S60s, which are like a 57mm anti-aircraft gun. And then you go into NASAM space, then Patriot space. So essentially, you've got to organise your it's pretty much an integrated air and missile defence system. where you need to effectively employ systems based on cost per kill. So cost per kill for a missile is very expensive, right? But if you're unable to engage it with, anti-aircraft gunfire, which is most cost effective so far, you might have to push into the missile space and then you delegate it to another system because you might not want to lose your critical infrastructure, right? Or if you're close to civilian infrastructure, the beaten zone is going to fall on a civilian population, then you push for a missile-based system as well.
So yeah, you can engage it from further away, and the onion system that you described makes a lot of sense. Now, at the core of this is your HORAS TDE.
Yes.
What exactly is that? What does it look like?
So HORAS TDE is an intelligent fire control system. So you probably see misrepresentations of command and control, but fire control system still, as a term, is used widely in the Navy. For some reason, ever since the end of the Cold War, we sort of got it, what a fire control system is in the lexicon of our capability development. So, what you have on your tanks, for example, to be able to get a track is a histogram-based system and you get a laser and then it makes an offset to make an engagement. So that's how the Abrams, for example, is quite accurate. But fire control systems is the way naval ships have been engaging targets ever since the turn of the 20th century because they find they were firing at longer ranges. So what we do is we're revolutionising that, which you pretty much use only half your camera's capability. But essentially, the intelligent fire control system brings both your detect, recognise, track, identifies, assess and engage, and completely automate that essential kill chain.
So what did you mean by oftentimes they don't use the full scope of the detect system?
Yeah, so obviously you've got different methods of finding your target. So you've got passive and active means. So, you could use radar or LiDAR as your active means, or you can go into passive, which is like your passive radar, your RF detection, and then computer vision. And computer vision can be used on thermal and camera. So we can do both, but we thought reducing your signature management for that's like we were talking about earlier is your survivability onion. So what that allows is you're able to gauge targets at a further distance without unmasking your position, producing emissions.
Yes.
So we were able to develop passive ranging and classification. If that fails, if it can't classify the target, you'll still be able to lock on and engage the target.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've not been there. You have. My understanding was when the war first kicked off, and not the 2022 iteration, but right from the 2014 invasion to the 2016 annexation of Crimea, what we saw was that that emissions aspect was really critically important, to a point where, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the troops that resorted to that kind of trench-style conflict were laying wire to communicate through wire again because you couldn't have that radio frequency emissions. Yeah,
exactly. So when people were using their phones in the trenches, you could map their EM signature and go, okay, there's presence there. And when they were trying to make a breakthrough in the in Ukraine in southern region, they found that they were attacking trenches where there was, like skeleton crew. So EM signature became an increasingly important thing with that offensive.
So you could track the density of troops by the amount of mobile phones.
Correct.
Yes, of course. And then so if you're actively searching, so that's quite unique. So if your HORAS TDEs, your HORASes are on passive mode, you could potentially have that build up without people realizing there's a build up.
Yeah, exactly. So if you put on a remote weapon station, mind you, HORAS doesn't just engage air targets, including drones. It's the capability to engage ground targets. So it has that other function as well. But yeah, you can reduce your EM signature, and you can use radar with it, or you can connect it to other radar systems that are more obscure, and get the track correlations. So, and if you're using in a contested airspace, maybe with some civilian traffic, you might, on the turn of a conflict, you're able to bring in the ADS-B feeds as well, getting the transponder.
What's ADS-B, sorry?
So you'll be able to, anything that's got their transponder turned on, you'll be able to find, it'll be able to passively pick up the targets within its range that it can pick up those transponders.
Yeah. So on the identification, the recognition identification front, so what a lot of people would say, so if you've automated this process, you do have a requirement to make sure that you're adhering to the laws of armed conflict and that you're acting in a humanitarian manner. As I'm sure, I know that you totally agree with me on this, because you and I have gone out for lunch before and discussed it. A lot of the atrocities that have happened following Russia's invasion, we don't want to do what Russia does, and we don't want to act with the same level of barbarism that Russia does. Yeah. How does this work, and how do you make sure that you're not necessarily targeting a civilian infrastructure?
Yeah, good point. So with the laws of armed conflict and Geneva conventions, all that govern the rules of warfare. With defensive systems, such as the close-in weapon system you see on the naval ships, effectively HORAS in an air defense role is doing that as a defensive system, right? So air defense is a defensive system. Whereas offensive systems, if you're using on the offensive, say engaging ground targets, then that will be defined by the customer, and those customers are usually, NATO aligned, and they'll follow those conventions. So there is our standards as well, so MIL standards. Unfortunately, they're subjectively assessed. They're called MIL Standard 882 for your software system architecture, all that type of stuff. Probably some people would just, berate me if I got it wrong right now.
Yeah.
So
they will, yeah.
Yeah, so that's going into the weeds a bit, but what we are seeing is our rogue actors really not caring about the rules. Yeah. So we just got to build with the foreseeability this could do the fully autonomous component, and we envision that. So my chief engineer is now doing a master's/PhD program through Defence Trailblazer to develop an objective system safety standard. So everyone can play fairly in the game. Currently, if you're a big prime with lots of money, governments take the confidence that, if something goes wrong, you got money to solve
the liability or the money to solve it.
It makes it harder for SMEs.
Yep. No, absolutely. Now, you and I were having a conversation a few months ago, and one thing that I really appreciated was the acknowledgement that one of HORAS's benefits was being able to scale up human output, right? Which is, and you touched on it just at the beginning of this podcast, which was in those early days and months of the invasion, just the scale of drone attacks, of missile attacks on Kyiv and Ukrainian military positions. And when you had very manual air defense systems, it's actually very burdensome for a population to prosecute war, but also then defend your own population centers. And one thing that you pointed out, which I thought was really cool, was that you're currently retroactively fitting the TDEs to your air defense systems to free up Ukraine's people power. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, so I won't go into the specifics because obviously for OPSEC reasons.
That's the hard thing about defence.
But there's some people that play that game and then they find out they just don't want to tell how bad their product is, right?
Yes.
Or capability. So, but we're essentially retrofitting air defence systems.
So this is obviously a very in-demand product given just we've seen that the modern battlefield is uniquely characterized by the very high amount of cheaper. I don't want to say the word cheaper, but more affordable explosive products. That is drones, missiles, to overwhelm air defense systems. What makes HORAS different from other capabilities in the market?
Yeah, so what we do is obviously automate the full kill chain, but we also able to plug into in-service battle management systems, or soon-to-be or future battle management systems, which we've tested across couple and TAC. So whatever HORAS sees, everyone else on that channel will see, and ranged and the classification of target, and be able to track up to 2,000, be able to process up to 2,000 tracks at 4 hertz. So that's been near impossible to achieve, but we've done a load test recently. So early days for us, but more than capable to process that amount of tracks. Because you might have multiple systems, so people like call them multi-agent. Let's just call it multiple systems. They'll be able to mutually support each other autonomously, and we showcase that in July at a very early stage. But also in development is weapons assignment. So if this system can't engage because it's got a pea shooter, let's go to the bigger system.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then presumably the TDEs work in a network?
Yes, networks. So it's designed for network-centric warfare. That was the coolest thing, probably a buzzword back in the 90s, or maybe as early as the 80s, but it was a real thing, and it sort of died out, that term, network-centric warfare. You probably hear, is it Raytheon? Who makes the Aegis system?
Lockheed.
Yep. Sorry, I probably insulted them. Sorry, guys. Okay. They call it cooperative engagement capability, and the Navy does now. So that's just a standard term.
Which is how you really exploit that onion skin, right? Which is because it is networked, and you realize, oh, this isn't working. Move up, escalate until you get to that point, which is that, like you said, it's that it's almost that price optimization problem, which is, now I don't mean price in the sense that we're boiling everything down to money, but it's the capability optimization problem, which is, okay, we're detecting that this is likely to land in a very sparsely populated area, or in a desert, or in the water. So therefore, we will engage it with up to this level of munition without expending our very important munitions.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Now, with this, we would expect that perhaps pending a lot of the trials done in the next 12 weeks, that these capabilities will be very widely proliferated on the future battlefield. What do you expect that would mean for the future of drone warfare?
Yeah, good question. So what you'll see with proliferation is you'll see the cost of the opportunity to kill, essentially, massively increase. So you'll have to increase your level of saturation attacks. And say if you're using gun-based systems, bullets will always be cheaper than drones for a long time. So you have to increase your industrial capacity to be able to overwhelm these systems. So you probably have EW systems, but EW is still in fashion, still works, but slowly over time these things will become, the drones that are engaging, slowly becoming more passive and autonomous. As we've seen, the innovation cycle, it was mentioned in the drone summit that was invited to last minute. Thanks, Alexandra, if you're listening to it. So Malloy. Thanks for the invite. That was good. But the innovation cycle in Ukraine is 40 days. So if you've developed a capability, someone's already developed a counter capability.
Right. Okay. So 40 days from the deployment of that capability on the battlefield.
Yeah.
So 40 days, you've got something really cool and innovative. Then 40 days after that, there's something that can overcome it.
We sort
Bloody
of
hell.
we're sort of leading to the law of diminishing returns, sort of kinda.
Yep.
But it's hilarious. You see the FPV drones go out because they're cheap and are treatable because ATGMs are expensive, and then they enjoy increasingly made more autonomous capabilities, and they realized, these are still a little bit too expensive. So they went to essentially converting FPV drones into cheap ATGMs, like wire-guided ATGMs, like essentially a tow missile, but with very long range.
Yep.
So 15 kilometers, you've probably seen both Ukrainians and Russians use it. So that's essentially what you're dealing with. And you've got to have a capability that can be upgraded extremely quickly.
Yeah. Which is, so your capability is, it's primarily, your IP is primarily the software or the hardware, which is...
Correct.
Yeah. So that means you can update it on the fly. It's probably not the best wording, but as developments come through, as innovations required, you can continuously adapt it.
So we're essentially the, for our customers out there, which are usually other primes, other partners, other SMEs, we're the cake mix. They just add egg and water, and they're the cake maker. We make you look good. So, in your capability, and you focus on the things you're strong at. So, weapon systems, missile systems. So, we focus your attention, and we customize the system for your platform.
Oh, okay, because it would be unique to the platform.
Exactly.
Of course. Now, for our listeners at home, what's the genesis? Where did Advent Atum kind of find its roots?
Yeah, good question. So when I was 11, 12 years old, believe it or not, I actually wanted to set up a company like this. As hilarious name. I was a big fan of, probably sounds evil, but I used to be a fan of Alien, and then you got the Weyland-Yutani core, and then I used to play Doom 64 on Nintendo, and didn't play it again because I got really scared after a Skullface. But the United Aerospace Corps, so I'm like, put those together, Starship Troopers, and wanted to create it like IAMC, like International Aerospace Marine Corps. Really cheesy as a kid, and that was essentially my business plan. So in 2019, so I'm like, I want to do something, saw something cool, knew that we need to automate systems rapidly, both in the defense and commercial space. And we didn't want to be, pretend to be, dual use. We want to do the extremes, right? So extreme defense, extreme commercial. And we're working in the autonomy and electrification space. But lately, because of conflict, we've been just 100% down on the autonomy space so far.
How do you go from, so you started in 2019 and within 3, 4 years, 5 years, you're kind of, you're already on the battlefield. How did you do that? Yeah,
good question. So, I don't know how I got there. So
you had a good product and it worked,
just winged it, I guess. Yeah. But just made sure I didn't do anything dumb and break any laws. That's the main thing. But just saw a need, and because I'm not a salesman by trade, I was able to talk to people and talk to those people and talk to those people. And product market fit isn't critical, but also knowing what your customers want, but not actually asking directly what they want, because they tell you they just want faster horses. Yes. It's an old Henry T. Ford saying, right? Yep. So you got to combine, the traditional wisdom of the industry, as well as, new innovational ways of doing things. If you combine those components, you'll be able to do rapid iteration cycles. And you've probably seen that. It's called first principles engineering with SpaceX and Tesla, as an example, Apple with their Apple iPhone. There was components mature, and you'll be able to combine it into a complete product.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what does the next 12 months hold for Advent Atum?
So the next 12 months is commercialization. So we're focusing on getting all our integrations with all our customers complete, and then scaling commercialization to meet that demand and not going bankrupt in the process. So as the fun thing with SME is production hell. Yeah. So if you survive that, you can survive anything.
Yeah. Where's your manufacturing facility?
Well, good question. So we've outsourced our manufacturing in Brisbane. Yep. But we actually going to open a facility on the 1st of March.
Oh, announcing it here on the podcast.
Yes.
Thank you.
So lots of good news.
Yeah, fantastic.
I won't say it so I don't get any protesters.
Of course, yeah.
But just go, just look somewhere around Western Sydney. You might find us.
Yeah. Well, you might be inviting a headache there. No. Obviously a very big place. Well, that's fantastic. So you've got a pretty big to-do list for the next year.
Yeah, and spending half of it out of the country.
On a plane and in the front lines.
Yeah, and so never been to France, so I've always been keen to eat croissant. So hopefully I said it right, guys. With any French listening right now.
Send your complaints to Liam.Garman at momentummedia.com.au. I'll pass them on to Andy for you.
And maybe Northern Ireland too. So Northern Ireland, is that how you say Ireland?
Really?
So yes, during the Euro trip and Madrid.
Oh, so this is for a holiday, not for Advent Atum.
No, this is Advent Atum.
This is Advent Atum.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I just got to make sure the people rock up so they're not just working from home. So when we go visit them and go sign things.
So who's that with? Can't say.
Can't say with that one.
Oh, see, that's the.
But you'll probably hear it in a media release or some, Defence Connect.
After the fact.
Give me some excitement, mate.
Yeah, I know. You can't give everything. You can't reveal it all right away. We have to have some kind of. Build up. But no, it is exciting. It seems like you have an amazing year ahead of you, and I wish you all the best. But Andy, I think that is all we have time for today on the Defence Connect podcast. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah. I just thought I'll let the world know that got a kid on the way. It's a girl.
Congratulations! Woo! Popping champagne.
Yes.
Wow. What's the due date?
September.
Oh, it's another September baby. That's good.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
hope all goes well.
Yes, all the best for yourself and your partner with that. That's very exciting. And hopefully your 12 weeks in France also yields some amazing results for an amazing Australian SME.
Yes. As I always say, keep low expectations and you'll always be surprised.
Yeah. Don't sell yourself short. Andy, that is all we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining me. And to all of our listeners, we'll be back at the same time next week with another Defence Connect podcast. But until then, bye-bye.